Cool. Hello everyone, my name is Jay. I'm one of the expert teachers at E2 Language. What we're going to do in this live class is look at some tricky pie charts. We're going to look at some tricky pie charts for Academic Writing Task 1. What I mean by tricky is this. Imagine if this is what you saw on test day. Would you know what to write? Would you be able to write a response that warrants an IELTS 8 or 8.5 or even 7.5? Or would you get stuck on that terrible 6.5? What we're going to do in this class is look at these two pie charts. Usually what happens in IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 is you won't get one pie chart because it's too easy. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a single pie chart. Usually it's two pie charts because at some stage you have to compare data. I'm going to show you how to do that. In fact, I'm going to show you a bit of a superstructure for how to write this. And what I want to do in this lesson, even if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, get out a pen and a piece of paper and let's write this thing sentence by sentence. Because it's only when you have actually written one that it sticks in your brain. Then you can go in on test day going, bang, I know what to do. If you just want the theory and you just want to look and sort of get some ideas, that's fine. But really doing is learning. There you go. I don't know what that means. Let's take a closer look at the graph description, because on test day, above the pie charts will be this box of text. It says, the pie charts below show how the city of Hertfordshire funds its public libraries in two financial terms. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. In other words, let's read it again. The pie charts below show how the city of Hertfordshire funds its public libraries in two financial terms. So one of the pie charts will be one financial term and the other will be the other financial term. Cool. Let's look at this closely. This says summarize the information, select and report the main features, make comparisons where relevant. This is in fact what you have to do to achieve a high IELTS writing score. You have to make sure that you do these three things here. This is where the superstructure comes into it. Because what we effectively want to do is this. We want to summarize, we want to describe, and we want to compare. What I mean by that is this. This is what your response, your writing should look like on test day. Of course, you won't have any of this written here, but this thing here is what you should write on your paper with these gaps in between. Here you have the summary, here you have the description, and here you have the comparison where it starts to get complex. I'm going to walk you through how to write each part. We're going to do it sentence by sentence. First, we'll summarize. That's pretty easy. That's this part here. All you need to do to summarize is rewrite that first sentence, the description, in your own words to say the exact same things. The exact same thing, rather. So we're going to use paraphrase, we're going to use synonyms, we're going to rewrite this sentence in our own words. And this is how I did it. I broke it down into its constituent parts. So where it says the pie charts below, I wrote the given pie charts. Where it says show, I wrote illustrate. Where it says how the city of Hertfordshire, I wrote how the city of Hertfordshire. Why? Because sometimes there isn't another way to write it, and you have to make sure that you say the exact same thing. So sometimes there won't be a synonym. Sometimes there won't be a paraphrase to do it. Sometimes you have to steal the phrase directly from that description. Cool? What about the next one? Funded its public libraries becomes provided funding for its public libraries. So I've used the same words, but I've just changed it a little bit. And finally, over two financial terms, I wrote in the 2014 and 15 and 2017-18 periods, like that. Now it's your turn, because all I did was convert that into my sentence that says the exact same thing. Please rewrite the task in your own words. You have 2 minutes. That's 1 minute. I'm just going to check the chat because some of you are pretty fast. Yes, here we go. The pie charts compare the funds given to the public libraries of Hertfordshire City in 2014, 2015, and 2016, 2017. Really good. Really good. You did it differently. I do it a bit of a safe way where I just basically rewrite it phrase by phrase. But what you've done is actually restructured the whole thing and written it differently. But it's good because it has actually captured the exact same meaning. So that, very clever. Well done. The given pie charts represent how the city of Hertfordshire spent the revenue. Hang on, is it about spending revenue? It's about funding, which is different to spending. So you would lose points there because it's not about spending revenue. It's about creating revenue or funding. Funding is the key word. That's probably a word that you can't find a synonym for, or what's a synonym for funding? I don't know. Please feel free to write one into the chat below, into the comments. The pie charts represent the expenses. Again, no, it's not expenses, it's funding. It's funding. That's something different. The given pie charts represent how the city of Hertfordshire funded its public libraries over 2 terms. Well done. That was simple. Keep it simple. The simplest way to do it is to break it down piece by piece and then rewrite it. And make sure words like funding are different from spending, okay? So that's a critical thing to remember. Cool. Let's move on to the next step, which is to describe the data, okay? What I mean here is we want to describe the main trends. In this section, we don't want to use any data, no percentages. You can use years, that's fine, but we don't want to use any of the numbers because that comes in the next section where we compare. That's the tricky part. This part, really, what you're doing on test day, what you need to remember is to describe the main trends. So I'm going to read you mine. Mine says this: overall, funding remained relatively similar over the period stemming from the 5 same sources. Council tax accounted for the majority of the funds, followed by other government grants. Revenue support grants, business rates, and other forms of income also contributed to the funding. See how I've used the word funding, funding, funding? There's no synonym for it. Cool. Let me show you how I did that. So first of all, I wrote a sentence about overall. What I did was I just stood back, looked at these 2 graphs. Let's have a look at them. Let's break this down because we need to understand what we're looking at. Let's look at council tax. This is the green one. So it was 57% and 68%. And of the entire thing, well, it takes up a majority. It's more than 50%. So I said something like that. Let me escape that. No, it's going to die. Don't die. Come back, come back, come back. Cool. What else have we got? Let's look at the next one, which is revenue support grant. It went from 18 to 6, so there was a decrease there. Fine. What about this one here, business rates? Well, it went from 6 to 5, a small decrease. What about from other government grants? Well, this went from 17 to 19. It's a small increase. And then what about this one? Other income went from 2 to 2. Well, in fact, it remained stable. So really, what's happened here? Well, they've remained pretty similar. There aren't many big differences. And the other way to look at this is you should see this total income here, £820 million, £816.9 million. So let's go back to my sentence here. I said overall, the funding remained relatively similar over the period, stemming from the 5 same sources. Okay, please write your overall sentence. I don't want you to say anything in particular, nothing specific. Just compare those 2 graphs and where the funds came from. Okay, one sentence. Just write one sentence. We're going to do this sentence by sentence. You have 1 minute. All right, let me have a look at your sentences. In general, good. Yeah, funding remained the same in both terms. Did it remain the same? Not quite. It remained almost the same or very similar. There were some differences, so you can't say it remained the same. That would be incorrect. It is obvious that the vast majority of money funding comes from the council tax. No, we're not getting into comparing things or anything like that. We're just giving a general description of what we're looking at. A very bird's eye, stand back, look at those 2 pie charts and say, you know what? They're pretty similar and funding has come from the same 5 sources. That's it. Very basic, this first sentence is just really general. Overall, it can be seen that the funds given by the council tax has slightly increased over time. Good, but I don't think that's true because it actually went down. Fine. Overall, there was no significant differences in funding over the 2 financial periods from 5 different sources. That is a good sentence. That is a good sentence. Cool. Let's keep going because we're going to move on to the next one. I wrote, overall, funding remained relatively similar over the period, stemming from the 5 same sources. You can see that. Now we want to do this one. We want to describe the council tax and the other government grants. Why? Does anyone know why? Why did I put these 2 together? Just type into the chat. Why am I going to combine these 2 into one sentence? This is the $100 question. You answer this, let's make it $100 million. $100 million. Any ideas? Any ideas? Yes, good. They both increased. They were the only two that increased in funding, okay? That's why I've put them together. So have a look at my sentence here. I've said, council tax accounted for the majority of the funds, followed by other government grants. Right, I've put them together. Yes, that's fine. Let's go back. Mine's a little bit different. Fine. Please write one sentence that doesn't compare but describes both the council tax and the other government grants, please. You have 1 minute to write one sentence that describes these two funding sources. Okay, let's have a look at the chat here. Council tax and other government grants were the majority sources and no had increased, just and increased over the time periods. Good. Yes. Nice and simple, very clear, general trends. What are they? You've chosen two pieces of the pie that both showed increases. You've put them together in a sentence and you said, you know what? These two things increased over the time period. They also accounted for the vast majority and they increased. We're keeping in this paragraph a very general view of the trends. In the next paragraph, we're going to specifics, okay? Council tax increased its funds as well as other government grants. Good, fine. You can make it a little bit more complex, but that's good. Well done. Cool. All right, so I said the council tax accounted for the majority of the funds, followed by other government grants. And I could have also said that, and they both increased over the periods. Fine. Now I grouped these ones together. Why did I group these ones together? Because they all decreased. This one went from 18 to 6. This one went from 6 to 5. Whoops. This one stayed relatively similar. Why did I put that one there? Anyway, there you go. I screwed up there, but let's read this. Mine says, revenue support grants, business rates, and other forms of income also contributed to the funding. Fine. I didn't mention anything about decreasing, but I think you probably could. I think you could say something like revenue support grant and business rates decreased over the period, while other income remained the same or something like that. So please describe, you can do these two or in a third sentence here or something like that. See how you go. All right, let's have a look at some of your sentences. Okay. In contrast, good, here we go. Revenue support grants and business rates decreased in the following financial year while other income remained unchanged. Good. So you've just described the main trends there. You haven't used any data, and you've done that accurately by saying that 2 of them decreased, 1 of them remained stable. Good. Revenue support grants and business rates decreased in the second term in 2017-18. Good. Revenue support grants, business rates, and other income shows a decreasing trend. Be careful here because other income didn't in fact decrease. It remained the same at 2% and 2%. So you have to keep that separate and perhaps write another sentence or another clause while other income remained the same over the period. Excellent. So what have we done? Well, we've just described in general terms those trends, or the general increases, the decreases, and the one that remains stable. We didn't use any specific data from the pie charts. That's next. This is where it starts to get a little bit tricky. This is where we have to compare percentages, okay? So what we do is we choose 2 pie pieces, we compare them, and we include the percentage information. This links back to right at the beginning in the task description that said that you needed to select and compare relevant information. Now, it's up to us which 2 pie pieces we choose, but it's actually quite simple with pie charts. With line graphs, it's much more difficult. But with pie charts, it's pretty simple because what we're going to do is we're going to compare this with this. We're not going to compare this with this, for example, because it's not a relevant comparison. We just want to compare what happened to council taxes in this period compared to this period. Then what we'll do, we might, because this is also the increasing one, we might compare this piece to this piece next. Then we'll compare this one to this one, what happened there specifically, and we're going to use percentages. What happened here? There was a slight decrease by 1%. And what happened here with other income? Well, in fact, it remained the same at 2%. So let's have a look. I'm just going to read you mine so you get an idea of what it means to include data, to include percentages and numbers. I said, comparatively, the total funds collected over the 2 periods were very similar, falling from £820 million in the 2014-15 period to £816.9 million in the 2017-18 period, with a mere £3.1 million difference. More specifically, council tax increased from the first period to the second period by exactly 11%. Following a similar trajectory, other government grants also increased over the 2 periods by 2%. Contrary to the growth seen in council tax and government grants, revenue support grants decreased quite significantly from 18% to 6%, while business rates decreased by a single percent. Other income sources remained steady at 2% over the 2 periods. So I forgot to tell you something here. My first sentence compared this with this, the total income or the total funds collected, okay? So that's what I first started with. Then I moved into, well, this one for me seemed like the most logical comparison to make. I compared these 2. Then I compared these 2, and then these 2 here, and then the red ones, and then finally, in my last sentence, I compared other income. So let's do this step by step. I want you to compare the total income over the 2 periods. So one sentence, compare these 2 numbers, please. All right, what have you got? What have you got? What have you got? Cool. Revenue. All right. Let's go back. Please compare these two. Total income, just one sentence. That's all I want. All right, here we go. The total income decreased slightly. Good, nice, precise. I believe it did decrease slightly, not that much. Well, it depends on what you think of £4 million. But anyway, decreased slightly from £820 million in 2014-15 financial year to £816 million in the 2015 to 16 financial year. Your years aren't quite precise, and make sure you use the precise data, because if we look closely, yes, it did decrease from 820 exactly, but remember this 0.9 there. So it decreased from here to here. One sentence. That's a good way to open up. Fine. So I wrote this. Comparatively, the total funds collected over the two periods were very similar, falling from £820 million in the 2014-15 period to £816.9 million in the 2017-18 period, with a mere £3.1 million difference. Cool. Now I want you to compare council tax, please. They're the two green pieces. One sentence, what happened over the two time periods? All right, let's have a look at this one here. Yeah. Okay, so we're looking at 57% to 68% over the two periods. So there was growth. Okay, fine. It is also evident that the funds given by the council tax has increased at approximately 10% over the period. Good. Council tax, being the majority source of funding in both the financial years, showed a further increase of 11% in the second financial year. Okay, in the second time period, in the second term. Beautiful. Well done. That's good. Well done, well done, well done. So you've compared these two here. Excellent. Basically, what did I write? I wrote this. I said, more specifically, council tax increased from the first period to the second period by exactly 11%. Okay, so I did a little bit of mathematics where I subtracted 57 from 68. You don't have to be good at maths. This is pretty simple stuff. It does help a little bit if you can do that, or you can just say it decreased from 68% to 57%. Cool. Let's do the next one, which I think is the most logical because it's also an increase. So we want to put our increases together. This is the other government grants from 17 to 19%. Please write one sentence. Cool. Let's have a look here. Other government grants also increase. What are we doing? Other government grants. Yes, here we go. Right. Other government grants remained similar with tiny growth of 2%. Okay, tiny is not a word that we'd use in formal academic language. With small is better, small growth, or insignificant growth. Insignificant is a nice word to use there. Insignificant growth of just 2%. Similarly, there was an increase of 2% in the revenue support grant as well. Fine. That's good. Similarly, there was an increase. Good. Similarly, so you've connected your previous sentence to this sentence. Excellent. A similar trend can be seen in other government grants, which increased from 17% in 2014-15 to 19% in 2017-18. Good. Other government grants also increased over the period by just 2%. Similarly, there was an increase of 2% in other government grants as well. Beautiful. So, as I said, following a similar trajectory, other government grants also increased over the two periods by 2%. So mine's pretty similar to yours. Now let's do, what have I done here? What have I done? Okay, I've combined both of these. So I've still compared, I'm still looking at revenue support. So I'm going to compare this one to this one here, okay? But I'm also in the same sentence going to compare these two. So I'm comparing blue with blue and red with red. I'm not going to compare blue with red or red with blue. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a bit of a complex sentence. And the reason I will do this is because the examiners will like it. Please have a look here. I said, contrary to the growth seen in council tax and government grants, comma, revenue support grants decreased quite significantly from 18% to 6%, while business rates decreased by a single percent. So I've actually done three things here. Let's have a look at what I've done because it's kind of clever and this is what you need to do. So first of all, I've linked my new sentence to the previous information. And I said, contrary to the growth in council tax and government grants, here's my beginning of the sentence. Revenue support grants decreased quite significantly from 18 to 6. And here I've included the other source of the other two things that have decreased, or the business rates rather, while business rates decreased by a single percent. So see if you can do that as well. Let's go back. See if you can write a complex sentence where you compare these two. And if you can, connect it to your previous sentence. All right, let's have a look at some of these sentences. I need to get rid of that. Cool. All right, here we go. So, revenue support grants significantly dropped by 2/3. Also, business rates slightly dropped by 1%. Good. Okay, good. That's fine. It'd be nice to connect this because we've talked about the growth. Now we're talking about the decreases. So it'd be nice to, it sort of jumps. We don't want it to jump. So we want to make a connection back. So in contrast to the growth, comma, then we can talk about the decreases. Need to think about how you connect sentences within the paragraph. Okay. That's also really important for your coherence mark. In contrast, good. Revenue support and business rates decreased over the period, with revenue support grants falling by 12%, as well as business rates falling by a marginal 1%. Excellent. Well done. Very good there. In contrast, good. So you've connected, you're not jumping, you've made a logical connection between the growth, and now we're talking about the decreases. In contrast, a substantial decline of 12% was seen on revenue support and 1% decrease on business rates as well. You've also written a passive sentence there, which is excellent. So we want to combine a few passive sentences in if we can, if it makes sense. Was seen, a decrease was seen. Okay, so that's a good passive sentence. Conversely, that's a nice way to link the two sentences. Conversely, comma, revenue support grants declined markedly from 18% to 6%, comma, while business rates showed a fall of only 1% at the same time. Good. That's looking really, really nice. So just to remind you what I wrote, I said, contrary to the growth seen in council tax and government grants, comma, revenue support grants decreased quite significantly from 18% to 6%, while business rates decreased by a single percent. Now I've left one sentence at the end to describe other income. Please describe this in one sentence. Compare the two time periods in one sentence. Let's have a look. Other income remained past tense, the same despite changes in other income resources. However, other income remained unchanged over the period. Good. This is the type of sentence you want to write. It's pretty straightforward. Use a nice connector like however or despite the other changes, other income remained unchanged. Good. Cool. Well done. So I wrote other income sources remain steady at 2% over the two periods. Fine. Recap. Before I recap, I just want to look at this. I want to look at this and I want to think about, well, we know the structure. We summarize, we describe main trends, we compare. Fine. But let's just have a look at some of the grammar in here. So I just want to look at these verbs. Illustrate, provided, past tense. Funding remained, past tense. Council tax accounted for, past tense. Revenue support contributed to, past tense. The total funds collected, past tense, were very similar, blah, 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 blah. More specifically, council tax increased, past tense. Now, this was a bit of a tricky one because let's go back and look at this graph. I've used past tense, 2014-15, fine, that's the reason why. 2017-18, well, this is where you have to make a decision because, Okay, they're allocating some future funding. So I should say something like business rates, it will increase, and use future tense. But I've just decided not to. Is it less precise? Well, not really, because I don't really understand. Well, we're talking about two funding periods, one that's distinctly in the past, one that's in the present, past, and future, just to make my life simpler. And I believe this would still be precise, because the funding could have been, this is where verb tenses and English starts to get crazy, because when was the funding collected? Maybe it was collected last month, in which case I can use past tense. In other words, it doesn't really say. But let's just imagine that these two pie charts, this one was 2014-15. Let's imagine this was 2019 for argument's sake, and 2020. Now I'm going to have to think about my verb tenses more critically and think about how funding was 18% for revenue support program. This is predicted to be, or will increase, or sorry, decrease, will decrease to 6%. So I could say here for if I think about, again, use these numbers as the guide to your verb tenses. So I could say here, business rates were, past tense, 6% in this period. They're predicted to, they will decrease by 1%. They will decrease. Then I'll use a future tense verb. So when you're doing this, thinking about the x-axis will dictate which verb tense you use, okay? Because it's going to be in the past, or it's going to be in the future. It's going to be hard to write one in the present, but that's the sort of idea that I'm giving you there. Let's just recap. So 3 things. We need to summarize the 2 pies, and we do that from the task description. We just simply rewrite that task description. Then we describe the main trends of the pies. We say, this one increased, this one was the majority and it increased, this one increased quite significantly, these 3 decreased and one of them stayed the same. Fine. Then third thing we do is we compare the pieces. That's where we get into the data. We say this one increased by 17%, this one decreased from 6% to 2%, whatever it is. That's where we get detailed, okay? So overall, what you want your writing task 1 to look like is this. This one, I did a word count. It's around, I think from memory, it's 173 words. So as long as you get more than 150 words, that's fine. Cool. And that is that. By the way, if you're on YouTube, you're watching this, please click like, click subscribe, and leave a nice comment. I appreciate nice comments. They make me feel good. Also, do check out the website if you need some help with your IELTS writing, because we're experts and we give feedback and we give tutorials and we've got good methods lessons, etc., etc. Right now, though, I'm going to go to Q&A for the E2 members. Should we use words like apparently or predominantly? It just totally depends on what you're trying to say. By all means, you can use those words, but you should only use those words if they're precise, if they're saying the right thing, okay? Don't just use words that sound good, because if they're imprecise, you will lose points. Any other questions for me? Any other questions for me? Cool, that's fine. Let me go check out YouTube questions. Let me check out the YouTube questions. Let me have a look. Let me have a look. Sir, I have a problem when I write. It's tough. It's tough. I feel for you. I feel for you. Feedback. Critical feedback on your writing is the best thing that you can do to improve it. Have an expert look at your writing and tell you what you're doing wrong. Only when you know what you're doing wrong can you improve, because the most difficult thing is that you just don't know what your problems are, right? Any more questions? Not there, not there. Cool. I might wrap it up. If you have any questions, feel free to put them into the comments below and I will get to you eventually. Thank you very much for coming along. I hope it was helpful. Do check out the website. I'll see you soon.